Hi, Kimberly.
I'm here with Lani Scozzari, who is, we've been friends a long time. We both went to the same art school locally here. You were a theater major, right?
Was, but I started as a dance major.
Oh, you started as dance. Okay. And little crossover into theater.
Yeah.
And I was dance. So we know each other from then. We were just kind of laughing because I had, in reference to my old YouTube channel, I had also interviewed Lani.
Yeah, I think it was like 10 years ago or something. You had it all decked out. It was like way before podcasts even existed.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to interview you because Lani is, I'll give her a little intro here. She is a beautiful writer and she wrote, it was a series of poems called Ballet's Child. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I felt like that at the time. I mean, it still holds so true, but just such a beautiful work. And tell me a little bit about that.
Yes. So my background is in poetry, but prior to that, I was a dancer. And I wrote a series of poems in my recovery from an eating disorder when I was 18. I was encouraged to do so by my therapist. And I went back many years later, 4 or 5 years later, I was in an MFA program for poetry. And having left dance, having left theater, and was really tuned into my poet self. And I finished those poems, and they became a manuscript titled Ballet's Child. And one of fast forward even more, I was meeting people at preschool when my first daughter, Tessa, just started school. And I was sitting around in a circle and we were introducing ourselves. And one woman said something that I was the only person in the circle that laughed. Everybody else thought it was like a strange comment. And I started laughing hysterically. And I said, I have to meet this woman. And it turns out she was a choreographer and I didn't know her. And I invited her to a poetry reading, and I happened to have extra time because 3 people didn't show up. And they said, do you want to read for 45 minutes? And I was like, fine, yeah. So I ended up reading the series of poems from the manuscript Ballet's Child. She got in the car. We got in the car to drive home later, and she said, these are a contemporary ballet. Can I make something? And I was like, yes. I had known her 6 months, and that was really like the beginning of me consciously saying yes to projects and just have no idea what this is going to look like, but yes. And so they became a contemporary ballet, and that it was extraordinarily powerful. It's still, it's kind of on the side, but we have dreams for it. So.
I was going to say, I think it was so amazing to see it, in production. And that was Donna that you're speaking of. Shout out to Donna. Because we were all kind of in this, like dance circle, but I didn't know that's how you met. And that's funny.
Yeah, it was really, and those were, the poems are autobiographical. I wrote them, the same reason I still write to survive and to make sense of everything that doesn't make sense, which is most things for me. And writing just somehow allows me the opportunity to make sense. And they tell the story, that particular manuscript tells the story of my recovery and, my recovery within the ballet world, but also highlighting that within the ballet world, which I think gets a bad rap sometimes. And often people will ask me, I have 2 daughters, they're 14 and 16 now, and they're both very involved in the ballet world. And they say, well, how can you, why do you put your children in this world if it's so, if it's detrimental and, so many things have changed, I think, in that world and continue to change. And I think it's not really about avoiding a particular area, but, instead instilling in my children the ability to have conversations around things.
Yeah.
And I'm also profoundly deeply connected to the beauty of dance. I find it to be one of the most magical spaces to be in. And I think that it's that beauty that always keeps me returning to it.
Yeah.
And I still take class.
Where are you taking?
I take at Ballet Palm Beach where the girls take. Sometimes I pop in. Usually I just do bar with their level, but I'll take classes otherwise because it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. Yeah.
I love that it didn't, being in the pressures of that world maybe exacerbated the eating disorder, I can imagine. And if you want to speak on that, but I'm glad that you didn't take that and let that sour your whole thoughts and feelings about ballet and about dance. So that must feel like very therapeutic that you now dance and can feel, just see the beauty in it, right?
Yeah, I'm watching your face and I can tell that our eyes look the same when we're talking about dance, that we're just like, oh, it's so fabulous. Yeah, I do feel grateful for that. It was a very conscious choice. I left the performing arts for some years. And then when I went back to graduate school, I was sitting there, I was 25 years old and all these freshmen were sitting around me, these 17, 18, 19-year-olds. And I said, I want to take class again. I want to take ballet. I had always taken like other forms of dance, but I had not gone back to ballet since I'd left it after treatment. And they said, okay, well, you have to take a placement class. And I did it. And then I ended up where, I was pregnant with my first daughter in the ballet class. And I was in graduate school. And it was really they taught classes there without a mirror.
Oh,
there were
that
no
makes
mirrors.
A difference.
It was so wonderful. And to do that and be pregnant. And my mom was a dancer and she danced pregnant with when she was pregnant with me. So it was kind of, cyclical, but it was really healing to go back. I have a poem in there called going back to ballet, finding it again. So, yeah.
Do you feel like the writing was the most important part of your recovery from an eating disorder, or how did that kind of come about? Like what was that experience like and what pulled you out of that dark hole?
I think that's a good question about the writing. I have always written, but I considered myself at the time I was in acting school. I was at a conservatory. I was, one of 10 girls that was accepted into this program. And by my own design, it wasn't anything that my parents wanted me to do. And I think I was born with an intrinsic desire to constantly be better. And I'm currently trying to, navigate that and, what's enough and what's not enough and how do you pay attention to the drive that continues to move forward. Mm-hmm. I think when I came to it, I feel lucky in a way at 19. And it was my choice to enter treatment. Mm-hmm. And I just knew that I didn't want to spend my whole life in that space. I just knew that wasn't what I wanted to do for my whole life. Mm-hmm. I knew that I wanted to be a mother. I've wanted to be a mother my entire life. And I mean, plenty of people say things to you, therapists and friends and, family. And I remember my mom said one thing and we were on the phone. I called her from my college dorm room and I was so miserable. It was so dark. I was so hopeless. And she said, Lani, if you don't start to feed yourself, you will not be a mother. Mm-hmm. And I heard her.
Mm-hmm. I just got chills on
I got chills too, looking into your eyes. I can hear that you understand that.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is where it will end.
Yeah.
It can end here in this bathroom. Mm-hmm. And this can be it. I don't think we have that many choices in life.
Yeah.
And when we're given them or when they're presented to us, if we don't gather agency somewhere from the bottom of our toes in those moments, that's really, we don't have so many choices, but that was a choice. I said, what do you want to do, Lani? What do you want to do? And so I decided to leave the school and I moved home for a year. I was in treatment. I did it. I did it. And
wow.
It ended up being a really profound year. I lived in my house. My mom and dad and I went to therapy together. My brother was little at the time. I got to be with him. I met my husband that year.
Oh, wow.
I ran my first marathon that year per the okay by my therapist. And, it wasn't anything I could have ever imagined, but it was the beginning of really letting go. Yeah.
You turned your life around in a short period of time at such a young age too.
Yeah. I feel grateful for that now. At the time I also have the need to constantly, do things now. I should have already done them in the back of my head. Like, why don't I have 15 books already, But at the time I was young.
Yeah. So there's like an element, and I don't know much about, suffering from an eating disorder, but there's an element of like perfectionism underlying in that, right? So do you see that like popping up a little bit in your life now, and you're saying, "Oh, I should have,
Yeah, I do.
should have this done." And
I do see that. I see it. A lot of times people will narrow down the conversation about an eating disorder. Oh, it's, really about control and, so multifaceted, so many factors. I think I'm an intuitive being, and I think that I have an experience of the world in a way that feels intensely. I feel very intensely. And I think I didn't always know what to do with that feeling. I will say that I couldn't, even 20 years, it's been 25, 26, 27, I don't even know how many years post-recovery. And it wasn't until recently, the last 5 years, that I really kind of put the last puzzle piece into that recovery. And my father told us about 5 years ago that he was an alcoholic. And when I was in my recovery process, he used to sit with me and he used to be with me and he used to just be still and just say all the most wonderful things that I needed to hear. He was extremely good at doing that.
Wow.
And I tell this story a lot to people that I'm working with in terms of parenting work. And he had an amazing capacity to be with me in my pain and suffering. But fast forward however many years, 20, 30 years, and he, told us that he had been an alcoholic, that we didn't, it wasn't anything that we really knew.
Wow.
I mean, I knew that he drank here and there, but it wasn't surprising to me, but it made sense because I think at a very, very, very young age, I knew something wasn't right. I knew there was something underlying that was happening in my world that wasn't validated externally.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, something doesn't feel right. Something doesn't feel right. And we're talking 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. 9 years old was really like a core memory for me in terms of the eating disorder, like becoming internalized. And I remember this moment where I was looking in the mirror. I was in dance class and I was looking in the mirror and I turned away and then I turned back and looked at the mirror and I looked completely different. It was like the person staring back at me was my new person who I was.
Wow.
And it was a person who wasn't good enough. It was a person who didn't do the right things. It was a person who was, gross and ugly and fat and heavy and it was really like happened very quickly. But I see now, and my dad telling us this about him, when he told us 5 years ago, I said, oh my gosh, that was the feeling.
Wow.
That was the feeling that something was wrong. And instead of being able to say, this is what's going on. Yes, it makes sense that you feel like something's wrong and you don't feel safe or you don't feel secure. I internalized it because I looked around and everything looked perfect.
Wow.
Everything looked just as it should. My mom and dad loved each other. We had a beautiful family. We lived on the water. I got good grades, all of those things. But there was something so innately. And I think for children, when their innermost feelings and innermost thoughts are not validated or confirmed by the external world, and it doesn't take a lot, but when they're not, they become internalized. They become our own internal voices. Something's wrong, but I don't see it. I don't see it. It must be me.
Wow.
It must be me. And so when he told us that, I went, oh my gosh, this is the last piece.
Yeah, that was what you were feeling. And that was your intuition speaking. And we talk about that a lot on the podcast with every guest. I've talked about intuition. So I love that you just organically brought that up. But that, your intuition was helping you get into recovery. Your intuition was telling you there was something not right. And that hits me on such a deep level because I have alcoholism in my family too. Yeah. So I understand that and I feel that deeply. So
yeah, it was profound. It was one of the final that makes so much sense. And what I learned too from that about my dad is that, as I said, he was incredibly good at being with me in my pain at 18 and 19. But what I understand that he failed to do was he failed to sit in his own pain.
Yeah.
And when I'm working with parents and when I'm teaching parents, the power of what we do as parents is really just to turn inward and to sit with our own pain. And when we sit with our own pain, when we sit with our own suffering, we teach them how to do it because they watch us do it for ourselves.
Yeah.
We're so fixated on helping the child X, Y, and Z, fix that, do this, do that. My dad could be there for me, but if he had had the capacity to sit in his own sorrow and his own suffering, what would that have done?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So maybe let's lead into kind of the work you are doing now. You have all of this experience that just seems like you're the perfect person to help someone, a child, another parent. So tell me about I know you're doing retreats, and I just talked with someone who was on one. Actually, I didn't tell you this, but she was telling me just through Instagram, like how magical it was. And I'm like, well, tell me more. Like, I want to know more. And she was like, it's hard for me to explain, is what she said. Yeah. And so I want to hear more about what you're doing.
Yeah, the retreat. Well, I guess I'll start kind of where it originated, or so kind of originated. But I taught in the classroom. I've taught infants and children to swim since I was 18.
Okay.
So like 26 or 27 years.
And we almost had you with my son.
Wasn't I know. I think it was COVID. You moved something. Yes. It was like craziness, but yeah, we almost touched, but we touched fingertips barely. So, going back, that's how we, during Ballet's Child, that's how you and I kind of reconnected then too.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. When I was in the classroom, what I was noticing, I taught swim lessons, but then I also was teaching I taught at a Montessori school in the area and a public school in the area with my daughters. And one of the things that I noticed right off the bat, whether or not I was teaching 2-year-olds that were in my space for swim lessons or eventually teaching high schoolers and middle schoolers, was that if we didn't have a vocabulary or an emotional understanding of what was going on with me, if they didn't understand what was going on with me, if I didn't understand what was going on with them, it doesn't matter how old you are. You can be an infant, you can be in high school, you can be in college. Then if we didn't have a vocabulary for that, we weren't going to proceed with any learning. And I began to just rely and develop an emotional curriculum. And I was lucky enough to have principals that kind of just, as long as you're doing reading, if you're talking about social emotional learning, that's great, So all of, basically for the first 8 weeks of school, like all of my lessons would come out of this realm. And I started to have parents ask me more about it. And then, like on Parent Ed Night, they would come in and they would say, oh, can we sit in on here? And I'm like, do I teach your child? And they were like, no, we don't teach your child.
Oh, wow.
I'm
You're
like,
drawing.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. And the principal will come in and she'd be like, you have to go home. No more questions. You can't ask. And I just be like, I just love it. I could talk about it forever and ever and ever,
Yeah.
And so then they said, could you teach a workshop? So I put together a workshop. I have one workshop. We're in our 7th year.
Oh, wow.
So that's a closed group, but it's kind of morphed and changed over the years. And then I have, just in the past few years, 3 to 4 years, I've been teaching some professional developments to teachers, to other professionals about interacting, emotionally with children. And they started asking me, can we do a retreat? Can we have a bunch of days where this is what we do?
Yeah.
I taught the emotional curriculum to children. After I left the classroom, I had some workshops that I would teach and have children come, and I would sit kind of one-on-one with children and do some work with them. And more, I just feel the push that need to talk to the parents and to teach the parents about
really
it
starts
all.
there, right? Yeah. Okay, I want to go back to the swim. I want you to give me a little tip, because when my son was doing swim lessons, this was kind of a traumatic experience, and I feel like it is I
think it's one of the first times typically that parents can't make it better.
Yes, and you really don't know what to say.
Yeah.
So and my son, I would pull up on the drive there. He was less than 2, he was little. He was maybe, 14, 15 months. Well, we kind of did it over a course of time. But anyway, we would get there and he would run across the yard.
They're always running. I teach at my mom's pool. The neighbors are always like, there's a naked child running down the street. I was like, oh, it's okay.
He was definitely naked. Yeah. Running across the lawn. And I was like, oh my, I don't even, we're out of control right now.
This can't be okay. I know. So, over the years, definitely really what that's taught me and what I take away from that is that these little ones, just like any age, are just saying, this is hard. They may not have the vocabulary. Some of them do. I have some 2-year-olds that, aren't talking much. And then I have some 2-year-olds that are, talking like crazy. And one little girl recently, she just said, "Stop putting me under the water because I'm yelling at you and you're not listening when I'm under the water." I said, I know. But really, really what it's about is it's just validating that this feels hard. This is big work. I understand that this feels really, really hard.
And that's what you tell them.
I must say it 500,000 times a day. And I tell the
so
parents,
loving and sweet. I mean,
well, that's really what it is. I mean, what am I going to do? And so I try to tell my parents, on the side, I said, it's the best thing. Just keep breathing.
Yeah.
Just keep breathing. Like, it's very important that they trust the person, on a safety note. It's very important that they feel like they trust the person who's handling their child.
Yeah.
But I kind of laughed because I never even let my kids like cry it out to sleep. They were both like terrible sleepers. And I was like, I can't let them cry. But for 27 years, literally they scream they're crying in swim lessons. And they're like, how do you do this? You're such a nice person. And really what I say is like, I love them enough to let them be uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. What they're telling us is they are uncomfortable. Do I think that they can move through this? 100% I know that they can move through this. And that's really the metaphor for so much. I say to them, okay, do you see what they're doing right now? Remember this when they're 17. They're going to use different words, but there's nothing you're going to do or say that's going to make a difference right now. You have to just let them be. I understand.
Yeah. Wow.
This makes sense. Do you understand that this feels hard? I really hear that this is hard for you. Mm-hmm. Oh, I get it. And I love you. I know that this is hard.
Yeah.
And this is so hard, right? This feels like such big work.
Yeah.
And I know you can do it. And I know that feels hard.
I'm like, I want someone to tell me that when I'm not feeling
you have to come to my workshops or my retreat. That's my little plug for you. Yeah, because that's really what I'm teaching, but I say too, like, it's so much easier when you're working with other people's children. I'm always so grateful that like people have entrusted me for all of these years because I get to practice every single day, all day, either in swimming or in the classroom or whatever it is, where I get to practice having this vocabulary and having these things and, not doing it with my own children because that's when it gets really hard. So I like to teach parents to do it in like a sort of a contained environment, practice with each other. We practice, and then bring that back. Like, how can we do it here? Because to go just from here to there is really hard with your own kids. So let's just choose one phrase. So I don't tell the parents at swim lessons, but some of them are like, I went home and I practiced all those things you said. Yeah. I'm not telling them to do that. Of course, I'm just there to teach their child, but they're like, I used that one. I could understand. That's a good one.
Yeah. They're picking up on that, which is great. You're doing like dual work there. You're like helping the kids, helping the parents. Yeah.
I think, it's just, I'm just so grateful for the chance I've learned so much from these babies and children.
Oh, I bet.
I mean, oh my God.
I bet. So tell me, like with parents, the parents that are typically coming to see you, are they dealing with the aftermath of a traumatic experience, like a change, like a divorce, or are they just feeling like parenting is hard, which it is.
Okay, let's just establish parenting is extraordinarily inconvenient on every level, but we don't think it should be.
Right. There's got to be a way to make it feel a little easier, right? That the words just come, that you're able to
it's practice.
Work through.
It's just practice. It's everyone.
Yeah.
It's everyone. So many of the people are parents that I've taught their children at school or taught their children in swim, and they've just, kind of naturally, it just has kind of evolved that they end up in my workshops or at a retreat or something. But it's everyone. And I'm a Montessori child. I went to Montessori school. My mom was a Montessori teacher. I went through 5th grade. My children both went to Montessori.
Oh, through 5th grade. Oh, that's so awesome.
And then I taught in Montessori school. And one of the things that there's many things I take from Montessori, but one of the things is that in Montessori setting in education, it's a mixed age group. Mm-hmm. So we have 3 to 5-year-olds. We have 6 to 9-year-olds, and so on and so forth. And that's the basis I'm realizing. It's kind of being shown to me that I have a room full of people. Maybe one has a 2-year-old, maybe one has a 28-year-old, maybe one has a 44-year-old. but that we can look back, we can look forward, and we can realize that we're really just all doing the same thing.
I love that.
And I think, at first people were like, well, are you going to you need to do all parents of 2-year-olds. And I'm like, that's 1 year.
They grow so fast and they move through those
so fast.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you only want people that are teething, but what can we learn from people who've walked through teething? Right. If you're talking about that age, like when they're looking at
teeth.
who use their teeth, who now have braces, who, now get their wisdom teeth out.
Yeah.
So that's kind of just evolved. It feels natural to me to have it in that setting. And I'm realizing that maybe it was intentional, even though it wasn't necessarily a cognitive choice to do it that way. But I love that because it's people who, in the last retreat, we had people. So my mom comes to my workshops, which is
nice.
Really, really cool. And
now, was your relationship with your mom always, we're going to go personal.
Yeah, I love that.
Like, because you were having some struggles, there was also some struggles in your home that you didn't know till later, but like, how was your relationship with your mom? Was it always pretty strong?
No, I really hated her.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I hated her at the time when I moved home for that year. She and I did a lot of work. We did a lot of work. We were in therapy. I was in therapy. She was in therapy. And I think I can look back now and say, and I talk about this in workshops with her, that I think I was put on this planet to push her. And I always felt like this really important need to just break her open. I just wanted to break her open. And,
your intuition talking again,
which I will say, when my belief is that these children arrive to us knowing more than we do. And that if we can be open to the lessons that they are showing us, because I think that they know more. Wow. I think they have a greater capacity to see us for who we are. And I can see that with my mom. It was like she had an extraordinarily traumatic childhood, and it wasn't until the last 5 years that she really, really went into all of it.
Wow.
She started to remember things she had forgotten. And that made sense to me too. That made sense so deeply in my core I was like, and I always say, Mom, that's the work I wanted you to do. Yeah. Because when she does that work, it moves my whole life. Yeah. It moves my children's whole life.
Your little eyes, like like so many times it looked into your eyes and you're just feeling it so deep.
Yeah. And I just think that's so incredible. And it's been extraordinary. Yeah. I talk to her, 100 times a day. She's almost 70. She's 69 soon. And she sits in my workshops and asks questions. And it's not ego. I just happen to be like a channel where I've been given an opportunity to say these things that come to me somehow. And I think what a profound message that at 69, she could ask me questions. How validating. Yeah, my experience. And she's always, she's an incredible teacher. She's an artist and she has a curious mind. You used that word earlier, being curious. And she had to do her work too, though. And that was so gratifying for me to see her do her work.
We're all doing work. And I think whether you realize it or not, every single person is healing from something, working on something, trying to move past something that they've experienced in their life. And I think, I know when I was younger, I knew that I had worked or I had gone through some stuff. Let's just say, I want to say shit. I'm going to say shit. Yeah. but then as an adult, I'm like, oh, then I realized really the magnitude of all the things. Right. And then I have more empathy and compassion for my parents and what they were working through, and they were doing the best they could, And I think that's, if you can just remember that everyone is doing the best they can with what they have and with what they know, then it kind of brings you into a softer space.
I love that word.
With them. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my every single day. Help me to do what's mine to do. Help me to soften. Help me to let go what isn't mine to do. Yeah. Because if, we all want exits. We all want exits out of our pain. Somebody may do it this way, or a child may have a temper tantrum, or a teenager may say the things that they say or do what they do. And an adult may hide being an alcoholic for however many years of their life, but we're all just trying to sit with our own selves.
Yeah.
And we all don't like to be uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
like, it goes back to like what I was saying about the babies, like, and parents watching that, that's really like the first time they're having to like sit with their child being uncomfortable.
Yes.
And that's so hard. It's hard because it's hard for us as a parent because we become uncomfortable. You know, when everything is smooth and everything is calm, then we feel safe and secure. And the reality is that's not real.
No,
It's just
not
an
real.
illusion. So how can we be more comfortable being uncomfortable? And then how can we recognize in another person, they're just uncomfortable. They're doing their best. They don't know how to do it another way. If they could do it differently, they would do it differently. If they could, we expect, well, just do this or just do that or don't do that or stop drinking or don't, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work. If they could, they would.
Let's talk about resilience because that is the theme. And honestly, I did not really, I knew you were doing great work, but I was not really placing the main thread of what you're doing is building resilience with children and parents and relationships, marriages. So talk to me a little bit about resilience. Like, how do you define resilience?
So I think my definition has changed. Resilience to me is not a return. It's not a bouncing back. It's not returning to what we were. If we think about that word, like culturally, we say like to a postpartum mom, "Oh, you bounced back. Your body bounced back," and it's like I was going to use another word, but there's no freaking way my body after being pregnant and birthing a child is ever going to be what it was. And thank God, because thank God now I know what my body can do.
Oh yeah, it's a million times more powerful. I feel
So what you want to go? So I think we're constantly, or like when you move through something that's catastrophic, and we've had in the last 3 years we've had very, very profound loss. My children's best friend passed away at the age of 11, and her mom is my best friend, and then her father passed away as well a year later.
Gosh.
And so I watched my 11 and 12-year-old and then 12 and 13-year-old, and I watched their entire lives and mine.
Yeah.
I watched my entire understanding. I'm not a person that has very many illusions. I've walked through all sorts of things in my life, and I really see the world as everyone is doing their best. I really don't buy into, oh, if I do this, I'll finally be happy. I don't have so many things have shattered. And this seemed to me to be one of the final shatterings of illusions, was that I didn't know that sort of profound catastrophe or profound loss could happen to us.
Right.
And I'm understanding really my youngest daughter, who's now 14, she really loves this concept. She says, I always ask, like, why did this happen? Why did this happen to us? And she said, and I also have to remind myself, like, why did I get to be in relationship with Charlotte for all those years? Why did I get to have so much joy with her? And we heard a lot. Unfortunately, I heard from physicians. I heard from therapists, people I would consider professionals. Oh, teachers. Oh, have the girls bounced back? Have you guys bounced back? And it would it would enrage me. What I understood that they were saying was that they were too uncomfortable to have the conversation, which was no, they're never, ever going to be the same.
That hole in their heart may never
And they were,
fill.
those people asking were too uncomfortable to fathom what that was. And so my definition of resilience, I think, has shifted and is constantly shifting. And what I see resilience as is it's like an action. It's a continual expansion. It's a continual moving away from center. And it's a continual moving back and then moving away, back and moving away until the expansion, reaches its greatest place. It's
like
more
that.
of an in and out, and it's not a backward or a forward. Sometimes it maybe can be up or down or sideways or upside down, but it's the constant action of being aware that you're moving and wanting to come back to what's whole and real and good in this world. For me, one of the things that's a daily practice is that I notice beauty. Every day I try to notice beauty. If I feel myself moving away from something that's real, like where am I? What's beautiful? Like I can look into your eyes right now and I can see this little glisten from a little tear and I think, oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And so coming back, even if it's a tiny moment, that coming back to what's good and what's beautiful and what's profound, because now I know that I can't, we can't, I don't, the girls can't, nothing is either extraordinarily happy or extraordinarily sorrowful, that everything is everything all at once. And I think this concept of resilience is really just the constant movement outward and back into a space until, you build new pathways.
That's so beautiful. Like the way that you just described that, because I agree. I think in my mind, I'm thinking, oh yes, you're getting, and I said to you earlier, I feel like I'm getting back to the things I used to do. Right. But no, I'm moving so far forward from from the person I used to be and the things I used to do. Yeah. You're so right.
Because it's just an expansion. It's not a return.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
So that's kind of what I think about resilience. I use the word navigating a lot. I think resilience is navigating. Like help my children to navigate that what comes to them. They'll be able to move through, around. I mean, the definition of a navigate, I'm a word person, I'm a poet, really.
Yes, for sure.
Got a million definitions.
I love that.
It's to bypass, it's to go around, it's to move through, it's to move up, it's like every preposition.
Yeah.
But navigate is such a powerful, help me to navigate it.
Yeah.
Just navigate it. So I love that with resilience. That's become a core word for me, navigate.
So how do you help your children navigate through without completely driving the ship for them? So how do you let them be, support them, but also let them kind of move through things independently? And I feel like I am asking you this as a parent to know, because I have an only child and that's
hard.
Yeah. I had some feedback from a teacher actually this year of like, you need to let him do things on his own. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, you're right. Like
it's so hard.
I love to do it. But so give me some insight on that.
I like to take like a snapshot. So if you did swimming lessons, for example, with him, so I would ask you to return to a moment, if you close your eyes and you just kind of sit with it in the quiet, even if it's 5 minutes in the car by yourself, but return to the moment of what that experience was like, to watch him be in a place of discomfort and to also remind yourself that he did it and you did it, right? First, you have to acknowledge that whatever you're in with your kid is uncomfortable. It's really, really hard for me when they're not doing their homework and I know it's due tomorrow and I really want them to do it, but they're really not doing it. So to first, I'm constantly like, turn the mirror, look in the mirror, not at them, turn around, look at yourself. What am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? And so I say, okay, oh, wow, it's really hard for me when they're not doing their homework. Okay, I'm going to sit with that. Most of the time it's being quiet. We talk about that a lot. That's a key concept. But being quiet in your own discomfort. Because if you're doing it, again, if we give ourselves permission to do something, you ultimately give the people around you permission to do it. Okay. You're not going to change them.
Yeah.
No power in ability. There's nothing to be said that you're going to be able to change your child. We just have to like throw that out. I know it culturally, intrinsically, we think we're going to be able to change them. The truth of the matter is our only capability is returning inward, doing it ourselves, practicing it, modeling it, saying this is hard. It's really hard for me when you don't do your homework, and I'm realizing I really want to do it for you because I really want you to get a good grade, and I really want you to get into the good high school, and I really want you to get a good...
Yeah.
Do you see? Okay, so let me bring it back. This is uncomfortable. You say 1 or 2 times, hey, this is yours. Are you going to do this work or not? You're not going to do it? I know it's going to, what are the consequences going to be?
Yeah.
And then you kind of have to just really be uncomfortable. I have to be uncomfortable.
So how early do you start that?
Immediately.
Okay.
And you practice that, you practice that like you did in swim lessons. Like if you think back, I know that there's been so many moments where you've like allowed your child to have an experience.
Yeah.
And you've been uncomfortable in it. My theory is you say yes as much as possible. And I am not talking about, materialism. I'm not talking about, overuse of yes. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm saying to like the things that they want to do. I had one parent yesterday. She's like, I cannot let her wear that to school. It's not the uniform. I can't get her into her uniform. I was like, okay, well, say yes. You want to wear that to school today? Okay, you can see. You and the teacher can work it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And they have to deal with it on their own.
100%. Today we had a little thing, I'll tell. Tess and Tegan, like I said, they're 14 and 16. And, we've been practicing this. You have to have things that matter.
Yeah.
And if something is a no, it's a no. If something's like a borderline, maybe yes or no, make it a yes. Is it gonna make that much of a difference if they wear whatever it is? Right. Let them choose.
Yeah,
it goes back. Just validate what their experience is. You really want to wear the yellow shirt, and I'm asking you to wear the red shirt. You know what? You're probably right.
Yeah,
they're probably right. Remember, they know more than us. So we had this thing this morning with Tess and Tegan, and this has never happened. So it was quite funny. But they were a little bit late because I was a little bit late because this morning was different time-wise with what we were doing. So I didn't wake them up at the right time. My husband traveled this morning. He usually gets them up. So I was about 15 minutes off, and I was like, oh, I got to wake them up. So I wake them up, and they're like, oh, my gosh, it's so late. I'm like, don't worry. This was on me. Like, I'll just write the note that I woke you up late. I'll just, that's on me. So I went and ran, took the dog, did the whole thing, come back, and they're still there. And Tess is driving. And I'm like, what do you... guys, what? And they're like, we just couldn't make ourselves go to school. And they're like, and Tessa said, you're going to write like in the attendance thing. And I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
No. And they're like looking at me, and they're like, totally, like they're giggling and laughing. Like, they're like, you're not going to write it, are you? I'm like, no. They're like, cause this was, and Tessa goes, cause this was on us. I'm like, yeah, you guys made the choice. You guys can walk into the classroom late without an unexcused.
Yeah.
Happy to do it if it's on me. What's mine to do? But that's on you. No. So we went in, and they're like, it was so uncomfortable walking in. We get your point.
Yeah. Like a lesson learned, right? I always say that to my husband, because I'm like, guess what? If he does that right now, he'll probably never do that again.
That's the definition of a consequence.
Appropriate
consequences make that particular choice so not good.
Yeah.
They don't want to do it again.
They don't want to do it again.
I mean, that's a minor example, but I think the truth is you just turn inward.
Yeah.
You say yes when you can, no to the things that matter, and you recognize that you're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And this is hard. And you can say, this is really hard for me.
Yeah.
And you don't have to say anything else.
Just basics and being calm and just being loving, right? And I love that. I'll definitely remember that. Say yes when you can, no when it's like non-negotiable. And
some things matter. Like to me, like when they were little, like them taking their backpack out of the car, that mattered to me.
Yeah.
Go back and do it again. I guess you didn't hear me.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to tell you one more time. Do you hear what I said?
Yeah.
Okay. Go back. Okay.
Okay.
And talk less. Be quiet.
Listen to them.
Listen to them, which means not talking.
I love that. Okay. I don't want to not get to marriage.
Oh. Yeah, we should.
I totally want to talk marriage.
Okay, go ahead.
Because you've been married for 20 years.
I know.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. And I've been with my husband for 18 years.
Oh.
Married, I don't know, 13 or 14. I don't know why I can't remember that. 13.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been married 13 years. Yeah. Okay. No, 13 years this year. Oh, gosh, I don't know. But together,
a long
18.
time.
A long time. It's been a long time. So tell me about resilience in marriage. And, I don't even know where to start with that, to be honest.
So I think, what I've learned is, I said this about children, that they come in as knowing more than we do, and that they come in as our teachers. Mm-hmm. And, we all want a marriage, again, that feels like everything's going right, everything's going smoothly, it's so happy, and then we feel safe and secure. Because we place, culturally and individually, we place so much emphasis on the other person that when my husband does X, Y, and Z, I feel happy.
Yes.
And when it looks this way, the way I want it to look, when they pack the diaper bag the right way, when they get my kids onto school on time, whatever.
They're essentially perfect.
Right.
Is what we're wanting.
Well, not even perfect, but our version of our definition of whatever perfect is, because, moms are really good and women are really good at executing things and getting things done and planning things. And so we just do it.
We're superheroes.
Right. Right. Well, we think we are.
Yeah.
And then suddenly someone says, if you're lucky, like I've been lucky enough for, my husband at times to say, you mean to tell me you know everything?
Yeah.
Like, wait, let's just get this clear. You know everything that I should be and how I should do it. You know everything you should be and how you should do it, and our children. Oh, right. So you know everything.
Everything.
Right.
You are God.
Right. Like you're just an egomaniac, Lani. Like I know you're good at a lot of things. And I mean, really what he was saying to me in that moment was like, back off.
Yeah.
It's the same thing we're talking about with children. We could be most of my slides and things I read to my people I'm working with. I can say, you can say spouse or you can say child. Help me do what is mine to do. Help me do myself so I can give the other person permission to do themselves. But really, really, like at the core of marriage, like what do we want? What do you want in your marriage?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you want in your marriage?
Oh, do I want in my marriage? Oh gosh. How much time you got? No.
I know, but
I do want, and you just kind of hit on something that I'm thinking about is like, I think I try and tell him like ways that he needs to do stuff because I think that I have got it pretty dialed in and I'm going to really tell him a way to do something.
I know.
But I really, we fall in love with that person for a reason. Yeah. We want them to be themselves, right? I want him. I call him a little tornado sometimes, but I love that tornado. Yeah. Like I fell in love with that tornado and I fell in love with all the little things that he does and he's into and kind of his chaoticness sometimes.
Right.
And I do see myself trying to be like, oh, okay, well, you should do it like this, or you should be more organized, or you should not forget that 20 times a day, which I still think he should work on that.
Right, right. Well, you probably have some insight into that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, well, the truth of it is I think that they, we meet, we come together, and I think it's the same way with children. But if I could be in the space where that says he knows more than I do, or not even maybe more, but he knows. Can I trust myself that I'm going to navigate? Like Brian and I say this a lot to each other. 20 years later, and lots of therapy and lots of practice every single day. But saying, I'll say, do you trust me to navigate this? I'm going to trust you to navigate this. Okay. I trust myself to navigate this. Okay. I trust myself to navigate this. Really staying, really like staying in my own lane as much as possible.
Yeah.
But I will say that it sucks. I mean, talk about parenting being extraordinarily inconvenient in our deepest relationships. If we're, we have like, again, this idea that it's going to be like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so great. And what's a happy marriage?
Yeah.
A happy marriage is not everlasting. It's not a constant state of happiness. I mean, it's the simple reminders that you can go to bed at night and, touch the skin of the person next to you and how beautiful and how lovely and how intimate and just holding hands. But it's hard. I mean, our marriage has broken. Our marriage has been like thrown out to the curb and run over by a garbage truck and, nothing standing. And say, now what? I mean, we have gone through it again and again and again. And I think that simply saying that I understand what it's like to be fallible. That thing you said about how can I be reminded that this person before me is doing their very best with what they can? How can I look at myself? If I think he should be in therapy more, if I think that he should, look like this or do that or that, am I doing all those things?
Right.
am I doing all those things? Help me to do what's mine.
Mm-hmm.
I ask that about everything that I do with my children, any relationship I'm in, and help me to soften.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you can just return to a soften. I mean, I kind of have this like weird thing where when I'm with people, I see them as children. And I think it's like, I really like love children. So I can like see them at a particular age. And I think it just kind of like gives me like a weird glimpse into like, kind of like the essence of who they are.
Yeah, I love that.
So I try to soften into, you know, a lot of times I'll see my husband as like the 7-year-old like self whose parents were fighting and getting divorced, and, you know, chaos was swirling around him. And he was so unhappy that he was, you know, pulling his hair out literally. And I think he might be bigger. He might have lived longer on the planet, but how can I soften to that? He's having a hard time.
Yeah.
And that makes me uncomfortable. When he has a hard time, I'm uncomfortable. It's the same thing as sitting with your kids in swimming lessons.
Wow.
I'm uncomfortable when he's not X, Y, and Z perfect. Wow.
Yeah.
I better look at that.
Wow. I mean, that's so deep.
Oh,
I'm like,
it's hard.
I just learned so much from you today. I feel like I am going to go back into my relationship with my husband and my son and be like armed with all the softness.
It's exactly right. And how do you keep doing it? Like day after day after day. I mean, there's like practical things, you know, we, if we get away from it, we try to, you know, spend an hour together.
Yeah.
No phone, no nothing. You know, we just take the dog for a walk on Sunday morning, and we try to, you know, we try to really, really pay attention to that, because you forget and things happen and life goes and you just count on it. And all of a sudden you look next to you and you don't even know this person, or you don't want to talk to them. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh my gosh, especially as your kids get older, you know?
You know, it's so weird that because I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, parenting feels harder. And you think, oh, when they're newborn, it's so hard. No, it's pretty easy then, because I mean, for the most part, because they're sleeping and you can control everything. And now it's like, it's getting a little bit more difficult. There's less time. There's more sports. There's more homework. There's more this, more that. And yeah, you have to carve out like those times of the day. Actually, we spent like, I don't know, an hour or two yesterday and like had lunch and, you know, in the middle of the day and like, but you really have to make time for that. It's not so easy.
That's kind of the work, you know, like that daily stuff where you're like, oh my God, I really don't want to talk to this person.
Yeah.
All right, let me talk to them.
Yeah.
Like, let me look them in the eye. Good morning. And I see you and I love you. And do you see me too?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Do you see me? Do you remember me? Do you?
And then do I remember myself?
Yeah.
Do I remember myself?
Yeah.
Help me remember myself so I can remember you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have to know yourself first before you can know anyone else, right? Or give them anything. You got to give yourself stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so important. Well, Lani, to wrap up, I just wanted to ask you a couple quick little questions.
Okay. I'll be quick.
Not that I haven't been asking you a lot of questions thus far, but like just like a little rapid fire. Like, what are 3 things in your wellness toolbox that you kind of go to? It could be skincare. It could be something in your morning routine.
I'm really bad with skincare.
Don't
like, oh my gosh, Lani, wait, no. Oh no, you cannot use bar soap on your face. Okay. Okay. I write.
Get it out.
I write.
Yeah.
I run. If I can't run, I walk. I am in nature every single day, even if it's even if it's 20 minutes, and I go before I become a mother or a wife or anything else. I am alone. I get up really early, and I just
what time?
4:30 to 5 around there. It depends on what I need, you know, what the day looks like, but I'm always alone outside, even in the rain. And then the other thing is I find beauty. Sometimes you have to work at it. You know, there's been times in my life when I'm like, I don't even know it's beautiful anymore.
Yeah.
Or why beauty is important, but it's real.
Yeah.
Just look at the sun.
Yeah.
Look at a leaf. Look at the color of the green. So beauty, running, and writing.
I love that. Now, I want to get a book recommendation because you are a writer.
Oh, gosh.
So get one book that's really shaped your life, one that really stands out to you.
So it's a book of poetry. I was obsessed with it when I was in graduate school. And it's a book of poetry about a woman whose niece and nieces died in a plane crash. And I memorized every single word of that book, and I did not know why. And after Charlotte died, I started to remember all of these poems. And it was like 20 years prior, it was like I was writing a script
I just got chills again.
for what I needed to know.
Wow.
You know, the concept she wrote in this book, and I look for them everywhere.
Wow.
And then I found myself saying that. And I was like, why do I know these words? Why do I know these words? And I was like, oh my gosh, it's the Catherine Barnett book.
Wow.
And I don't know that everybody would want to run out and read that book, but it's profound. It's called Into Perfect Spheres. Such Holes Are Pierced by Catherine Barnett.
Wow.
And it served as a foundation for what I was going to need to know.
Yeah, which is wild.
I wrote to her. I hardly ever write to authors or poets, but I did.
And you told her.
Yeah, and she wrote back to me.
Oh, it's so special.
It was special. And she said, I'm so sorry you have to know these things, but I'm so glad that I could go before you.
Wow. Amazing. Well, on that note, Lani, you are magical. You're going to make me cry. You're like tearing up and I'm going to cry.
It's good. I love it.
I wasn't expecting that, but like such a great conversation. Thank you so much.
So grateful to be here with you. I'm memorizing this.
I know, right?
Yeah, totally.
From those days of interviewing you at the dance studio.
I love it. I'm so glad you remembered that. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful to see you.
So great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.